My company isn't paying overtime anymore. If you don't like it, find another job. That's what my boss said to me with a smug grin one Monday morning. He didn't even try to lower his voice. He wanted the whole warehouse to hear it. I had just finished a 14-hour shift the night before. My back ached, my hands were raw from hauling freight, and I hadn't seen my kids awake in 2 days. And now, in front of everyone, my boss stripped away the only thing that made those sacrifices bearable, my overtime pay. It felt like betrayal. I had given that company my time, my sweat, my loyalty, and they cut me down with one arrogant sentence. The room went silent, my coworkers shifting uncomfortably, afraid to speak up. I stood there, humiliated. But what none of us knew that morning was that my boss had just signed his own downfall. Before I tell you how I went from humiliated to victorious, subscribe to Lawful Payback and comment where you're watching from. Because this story is proof that the truth always finds its way out. My name is Ethan Morales. I'm 37 and I live in Cleveland, Ohio. For almost a decade, I worked as a warehouse supervisor at a regional shipping company. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and in today's economy, steady meant survival. Every morning, I was up at 5 a.m., coffee in hand, driving through Ohio snow or summer heat to make sure shipments went out on time. I wasn't just an employee. I was the guy they called when a truck broke down, when pallets tipped, when a late-night order had to be processed before sunrise. I never said no. Why? Because I couldn't afford to. My wife Maria stayed home with our 2 kids, an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. Between rent, groceries, insurance, and school supplies, every dollar mattered. But overtime, that was the lifeline. Those extra hours weren't for luxuries. They kept the lights on. They made sure my son had asthma medication, my daughter could go on her field trips, and we didn't have to choose between heating and food in the winter. For me, overtime wasn't optional. It was survival. And my boss knew it. Which is why when he cut it, he didn't just take away money. He stripped away my family's stability and my dignity. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was temporary. Maybe business was slow. But within weeks, the reality set in. My boss, David Reynolds, slashed hours across the board, scheduling everyone just short of overtime. I'd clock in for 39.5 hours one week, then 38.7 the next. My paycheck dropped hundreds of dollars. When I asked HR, they gave me a polite smile. Ethan, payroll's correct. Maybe you're just remembering wrong. I knew that tone, dismissive, patronizing. The kind of tone that said, you're powerless. But I wasn't crazy. I had texts from my crew thanking me for covering late-night shipments, delivery logs showing my hours, and time-stamped camera footage from the docks. Yet every time I questioned it, HR brushed me off, hiding behind company policy. Meanwhile, the bills kept stacking higher. The car's brake pads were gone. My son's inhaler refill was double what we expected. Groceries seemed to rise weekly, like a cruel joke. Maria tried to stay positive, but I saw the fear in her eyes every time she looked at our bank app. She stopped buying herself things, skipped dinner some nights, and told the kids, "Mom's not hungry." I felt myself changing. Irritable, angry, I yelled at my kids for leaving lights on. I'd barely slept. And every time I passed my boss's office and saw him laughing on a call, my blood boiled. Then one night, everything changed. It was late. Everyone had gone home and I was tidying up paperwork on a cluttered desk. Payroll forms, time cards, printouts, nothing special. Until I saw my name. The hours didn't match what I'd worked. My official record showed I clocked out early on nights. I knew I stayed hours longer. And not just once, dozens of entries were altered. My heart raced. I flipped through other names: J. Watson, L. Reed, T. Cooper, all missing overtime. Every record adjusted neatly to stay under 40 hours. This wasn't carelessness. This was systematic theft. Someone was changing time records to save money, probably to protect performance bonuses for upper management. I copied everything I could: photos, notes, copies. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. As I stuffed the papers into my bag, I realized this wasn't just about my paycheck anymore. This was fraud, and if I could prove it, maybe I could bring them down. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat beside Maria, telling her everything. She grabbed my hand and said quietly, "Then it's time they learn who they messed with." The next morning, I drove downtown to an employment lawyer's office. His name was Mr. Callahan, a calm, silver-haired man who'd seen everything. He flipped through the pages silently, then looked up. "Ethan, this isn't just unfair. This is illegal." He explained my company had violated the Fair Labor Standards Act, falsifying records to avoid paying overtime. If I could find even more evidence or witnesses, we could take them to court. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Someone finally believed me, but my company came back swinging. They hired corporate lawyers, filed motions to delay the case, and flooded us with paperwork. They even tried to intimidate my coworkers. One of them, afraid of losing her job, told me, "Ethan, please stop. They're too powerful." But I didn't stop. My boss, Reynolds, doubled down, walking past me in the hallway with that same smug grin. "You're gonna regret this," he whispered once at home. The pressure nearly broke us. Maria tried to stay strong, but the uncertainty was crushing. She sold jewelry to cover legal fees. I sold my tools. Even the judge seemed skeptical at first, cautious, even dismissive. But my lawyer told me, "Truth doesn't shout, Ethan. It waits for the right moment." And when that moment came, it would change everything. The trial began on a cold Tuesday morning. I sat at the plaintiff's table, palms sweating, heart pounding. My boss strutted in like he owned the courthouse. He testified first. "We run a fair, honest business." Ethan was unreliable and resentful. That's why he's making these claims. His lies sounded polished, rehearsed. HR backed him up, swearing payroll was correct. Their lawyers flashed spreadsheets, charts, polished binders, all carefully crafted to look legitimate. For a while it worked. The jury looked bored. The judge frowned at my lawyer's objections. I thought it was over. Then Mr. Callahan stood, holding one thin folder. He said calmly, "Your Honor, this is a payroll email chain we obtained in discovery." He handed it to the judge. The judge read aloud, "Cut 8 hours off morales this week. Don't flag HR, keep it quiet." Silence. The courtroom froze. My boss's face drained of color. Callahan stepped closer. This wasn't a mistake. It was a directive. Multiple employees' records were manually edited to save budget and protect management bonuses. He showed the logs, texts, and even the delivery timestamps. Then 3 coworkers stood to testify. Brave enough to back me. The case flipped instantly. The same jury that looked half asleep now glared at my boss like he was poisoned. The judge didn't hesitate. He ruled decisively in my favor, awarding full back pay, overtime restitution, damages, and penalties. Over $120,000 in total. But the money wasn't the victory. The real win was the silence in that courtroom. The look on my boss's face when the judge called his behavior deliberate deception. Within months, corporate headquarters fired him. The HR manager resigned before the investigation was even finished. The company had to publicly admit fault and implement new compliance procedures under federal supervision. As for me, I walked out into the winter air, lighter than I'd felt in years. Maria met me outside the courthouse, tears streaming down her face. She hugged me tight and whispered, "You did it. You finally did it." Our kids didn't fully understand, but when I picked them up that night, my daughter said, "Dad, are we okay now?" I smiled. "Yeah, sweetheart. We're finally okay." Now every time I see my reflection, tired eyes but proud, I remember standing up for what's right isn't easy. But it's worth every sleepless